Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Dear students, you are welcome in this lecture. Today we are going to discuss in detail about biofertilizer. The learning objective of this lecture are to define the biofertilizer, means what do we mean by biofertilizer, their importance and classification, discuss the role and constraints of different biofertilizer in crop production, means what kind of role or significance is there from biofertilizer and what are the limitations that restrict the use of biofertilizer in the country. So, let us see some glossary, some difficult words. Azolla, a freshwater fern found in ponds, ditches, canals and paddy fields, fixing nitrogen in symbiotic association with cyanobacteria. These cyanobacteria are also called as blue-green algae. Then biological nitrogen fixation, BNF, the conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia through some biological processes is called as biological nitrogen fixation, and it is accomplished by symbiotic and non-symbiotic relationship by certain microbes that we are going to discuss in detail. You will see how symbiotic and non-symbiotic nitrogen fixation happens in crops. Crop inoculation, cross inoculation groups, a collection of leguminous crop species which are capable of developing nodules when exposed to bacteria obtained from the same group. Cyanobacteria or blue-green algae, the cyanobacteria structurally bear a resemblance with bacteria, means there is no true nucleus and no organelles or well-defined organelles as compared to other bacteria. The cyanobacteria have chlorophyll for doing photosynthesis, and this cyanobacteria is single-celled also. Legume means plant belonging to the family Leguminosae, that is peas, soyabeans, peanuts, clovers, alfalfas, sweet clovers and vetches, etc. are all legumes. Microorganisms, sometimes they are also referred as microbes, and these are the organisms that can only be seen by microscope, means they are microscopic organism. Examples include bacteria, fungi, microscopic algae, protozoa, viruses, etc. Native nutrients, plant nutrients present in the soil are treated as native nutrients, means soil by itself contains certain quantities of the nutrients, and those nutrients by default are native soil nutrients. Nodulation, it happens mostly in legumes, process by which the rhizobium bacteria infect the roots of legumes and form knob-like structures that are nodules or kind of nodes on roots. Soil fertility is the ability of a particular kind of soil to support a vigorous crop growth by supplying essential mineral nutrients in adequate and balanced amounts. Overall, soil fertility means the nutrient supplying capacity of the soil or inherent capacity of the soil to supply nutrients in adequate and balanced amounts. Symbiosis, the living of two dissimilar organisms in close association and cooperation being mutually beneficial. AM fungi, before their name was VAM, vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza, but their name has been changed. Now it is always AM fungi, arbuscular mycorrhiza fungi. And arbuscular mycorrhiza means endomycorrhiza is a type of symbiotic fungi entering the cortical cells of the roots of a vascular plant forming arbuscules. And beyond this, they do not enter. They enter up to the cortex zone of the cell. Arbuscules are very important structure in AM fungi, and upon entering the parenchyma, the AM fungus forms branched structure called arbuscules, and they are inside the cell, means they are formed inside the cells, exchange for phosphorus, carbon, water and other nutrients take through these structures. Therefore, arbuscules are very important for exchange of substances between fungus and the host plant. Cellulolytic organism. Microorganisms that break down the cellulose into other compounds are cellulolytic organisms. Deleterious rhizobacteria. Non-parasitic plant bacteria living on or in plant roots and survive on organic compounds released by plant root cells. They inhibit the plant growth by producing some phytotoxic metabolites. Means these deleterious rhizobacteria are kind of dangerous thing in the soil and they are harmful. Lignolytic organisms are microorganisms that break down the lignin into simpler compounds. Let us see PGPR. Full form of PGPR is plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. As the name suggests that they promote the growth of the plants. So, plant growth promoting rhizobacteria play a useful role in plant growth other than plant nutrition. Means they are involved in plant nutrition plus production of extracellular siderophores, antibiosis, production of growth hormones and pathogen suppression. So, they are really very advantageous in the soil and for the plants. Phosphate solubilizers may be bacteria, fungi or actinomycetes which can solubilize insoluble forms of phosphorus. Phytohormones or plant hormones, the naturally occurring small organic molecules or substances which influence physiological processes in plants at very low concentration are your phytohormones or plant hormones. Rock phosphate, it is also called as phosphate rock, you can call it either way. So, the product obtained from the mining and subsequent metallurgical processing of phosphorus bearing ores being used to produce phosphatic fertilizer is rock phosphate. This is fundamental material which is used to produce all kind of phosphatic fertilizer. Sparingly soluble phosphorus, calcium phosphate such as apatite accounts for 95% of phosphorus found in primary minerals of the earth's crust and are commonly referred to as sparingly soluble phosphorus. Now, let us come to the main topic, that is biofertilizer, and first of all we would like to define what is biofertilizer. So, biofertilizers are the formulations having the living or dormant microbes. It can be both living or dormant microbes such as bacteria, fungi, algae, etc. alone or in combination of two or more microbes. Means biofertilizer can be produced solely, sole biofertilizer, or can be combination of two or more microbes. It performs variety of functions including atmospheric nitrogen fixation, solubilizing, mobilizing nutrients and releasing plant growth promoting substances for improved growth of the plants. And they are used to supplement chemical fertilizers and organic manures. That means that they are very much part of the integrated nutrient management practices. Integrated nutrient management practices or supply is most recommended practice for nutrient management across the world. So, in this INM we combine all kind of organic sources which can be supplied as plant nutrients. For example, organic manures can be combined with fertilizers and both can be combined with crop residues and or these biofertilizers. So, they are very much part of the INM, and INM is useful in the sense that it gives better returns to the farmers, it is good for the soil, means it improves soil health, and it is also kind of environment friendly approach of nutrient management. Furthermore, products containing living or dormant microbes like bacteria, fungi, actinomycetes, algae alone or in combination, which on application help in fixing atmospheric nitrogen or solubilize or mobilize nutrients in addition to secretion of growth promoting substances for enhancing crop growth. So, biofertilizer are very important these days, particularly from the point of view of organic farming. In organic farming, we do not use chemical fertilizers. So in those cases, biofertilizer could be very important. So let us see the major roles of biofertilizers. So first and foremost role of biofertilizer is in fixing the biological nitrogen or biological nitrogen fixation in the soil, which is readily available to the plant. Thus one can save chemical fertilizer. Means during the process of biological nitrogen fixation, particularly by legumes, the nitrogen that is fixed by bacteria or rhizobium is immediately utilized by the plant. That is quite interesting. And second thing is that this bacteria or rhizobium gets their food from the host plant, from the legume. So they do not create any pollution of soil or environment. Thus they are totally environment friendly. Reported to increase the soil fertility and productivity. They have been found to increase the carbon content in the soil. They have been found to improve the physical and chemical properties of the soil. Therefore, they improve the productivity of the crops. Provide plant nutrients at low cost. So you can see later that how they supply nitrogen. They solubilize phosphorus and they mobilize phosphorus also. And many biofertilizers have residual effect in soil. That means is that their effect lasts for many years and need not to be applied every year. They solubilize certain nutrients for the benefit of crop and development. We will see how mycorrhiza are useful in solubilization of phosphorus. Some biofertilizers help in uptake of nutrients by crops. Biofertilizer release enzymes, that is very significant part, and vitamins are also released. And they help in improving the plant's defense mechanism. Plant's defense mechanism, if it is improved, then plant can easily fight against the invasion of insect pests and diseases. Therefore, it gives the strength against the biotic stresses. Help the crops in tolerating certain biotic and abiotic stresses, particularly in drought conditions. If we have drought or lack of water in the soil, under those situations, certain bacteria or biofertilizer can be quite useful in tolerating the drought conditions. Now, let us see classification of biofertilizer. They can be classified into four major groups, that is nitrogen fixers, phosphate solubilizers, compost accelerators and plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. And in addition to these four groups, we can have AM fungi, arbuscular mycorrhiza fungi, and recently some K solubilizing, potassium solubilizing and zinc solubilizing biofertilizers are also being produced and recommended. So we will discuss in brief about this K solubilizing and zinc solubilizing organisms also. So see this chart, a broad classification of biofertilizer. This is for your ease, particularly a student can easily understand the classification through this picture. You can see biofertilizer is on the top and they can be grouped into three. One is nitrogen fixing, other is phosphate solubilizing, and the third one is organic matter decomposer. So nitrogen fixing you can have two, symbiotic and non-symbiotic, and this symbiotic may be of two kind. One is nodules, nodulation, and other is non-nodules, means they live freely, they do not live in nodules. And nodules, you can have two kind of nodules, one in root and other is stem. Like Sesbania rostrata, it is having stem nodules, it is stem nodulating legume, and other common beans, they are root nodulating legumes. And in non-nodulating kind of symbiotic association, we will see different other groups. And in phosphate solubilizing, we can have two kind of groups, phosphate solubilizer and phosphate mobilizer. Solubilizer means they make or they dissolve the fixed phosphorus into available form, and mobilizer means that they help in the movement of phosphate from one place to another place. And the third important group is organic matter decomposer. So they are two, cellulolytic and lignolytic. Depending upon the substrate they are acting upon, they are either cellulolytic or lignolytic. Now we start in detail nitrogen fixing biofertilizer. Examples we are going to discuss here is Rhizobium, Azotobacter, Azospilum, Azolla, and of course blue-green algae. So nitrogen fixation is done by microorganism either symbiotically, example is Rhizobia, it is the plural word of Rhizobia, and Rhizobium is singular. So growing on root nodules of legumes or non-symbiotically by a number of microorganisms such as Azotobacter, Azospilum and Acetobacter. Rhizobium. So it is really most important nitrogen fixation, commonly referred as BNF. Nitrogen fixation by Rhizobium was reported by Hellriegel and Wilforth in 1886 first time. This is very important. These kind of questions are asked from the students. So better you remember these kind of information. Beijerinck was the first person who isolated in 1888 the bacteria from the nodule and proposed the name Bacillus radicola. Initially name of the Rhizobium was Bacillus radicola, which was changed to Rhizobium later. Rhizobia are aerobic bacteria. They cannot live without oxygen that persist saprophytically in the soil until they infect a root hair. Suppose when legume plant is growing, these Rhizobium are there in the roots. But what will happen to these Rhizobium once the legume crops die? So under those conditions, these Rhizobia will still be living in the soil, but as saprophytic organisms. So they can live on the dead matter, but whenever they get a chance of meeting the legume roots, they will form the nodules and start their life cycle. Legume provides Rhizobium with carbohydrate. This is the job of the host or duty of the host to supply the food to the bacteria for energy, while Rhizobium fixes nitrogen and provide it to the plant. So it is just give and take. The enzyme involved in nitrogen fixation is nitrogenase. I can say this is the most important enzyme, nitrogenase. Nitrogenase has two distinct proteins, component 1 and component 2. Component 1 is iron molybdenum protein with 2 molybdenum and 28 iron atoms. So they are always there. If there is no molybdenum or no iron, nodulation or these kind of nitrogen fixation cannot happen. Then component 2 contains iron protein of 4 iron atoms, and the general reaction is nitrogen N2, this is from atmospheric gas, and then 6 electrons plus 8 H ion plus 15 ATP, approximately 15 adenosine triphosphate is required, and it converts in the presence of nitrogenase to ammonium 2NH4, and then ATP is converted to ADP because it is releasing the energy, and then this ammonia or ammonium reacts with organic acid which are there in the plants, and then they make the amino acid. So, and then finally amino acid is converted into proteins. So this is how nitrogen fixation happens in root nodules. The amounts fixed by forage legumes are generally higher than those by grain legume. So grain legumes in our case are pulses, and forage legumes in our case are clovers. So clovers generally fix more nitrogen than grain legumes, because in clovers most of the nitrogen is confined to vegetative parts. However, in grain legumes nitrogen is diverted to the grains. Then the residual effect of nitrogen fixed by legumes becomes available to the succeeding crop, and as measured by the crop yields, it is generally equivalent to 40 to 50 kg nitrogen per season. Means if you are growing a leguminous crop, your next crop will get about 40 to 50 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per season. See this table, this data in the on nitrogen fixation, the amount of nitrogen fixed by different legumes. So you see soybean, it can fix 100 to 150 kilogram per hectare per year. Chickpea is your chana or chickpea horse gram, it fixes 40 to 50 kilograms per hectare. Lentil is your masoor, 40 to 68 kilogram. Groundnut is your mungfali, 150. Field pea is 60 to 100 kg. Cowpea is your lobia, 90 kg. Cluster beans 60 to 150 kg, and you see clovers, they fix very high quantity of nitrogen, that is 100 to 150. So overall you can see the range may be 80 to 100. If we take the average, so 80 to 100 kilograms of nitrogen can be produced by rhizobium in leguminous crops. You can see this further this kind of data from nature and properties of soil, and it is for example locust tree, Robina species, it fixes 75 to 200 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. Then alfalfa is also known as lucerne, it is Medicago sativa, it fixes 150 to 250 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. And then clovers, Trifolium pratense, it fixes 100 to 150. So you can go through the data and see soybean 50 to 150 kilograms, and then pigeon pea or arhar fixes 150 to 280 kilograms nitrogen per hectare per year. Normally pigeon pea is a relatively long duration pulse crop. So you can see large quantities of nitrogen are fixed, and there is no charge. This rhizobium is not charging you anything. It is just charging some carbohydrate, some food from the legume, but in return it is giving too much of nitrogen to the host plant. So host specificity of rhizobium species means it is not that every rhizobium will inoculate or will infect the roots of all the legumes. They are very specific to the host plant, which is known as host specificity. One species of rhizobium cannot infect all legumes. A particular rhizobium species is known to infect or nodulate a specific legume or group of legumes. This is the cross inoculation groups are simply the groups of legume on which the given species of rhizobium nodulates. To obtain the full benefit of biological nitrogen fixation, it is extremely desirable to provide farmers with the correct rhizobia for their legume crops. Means if a farmer is buying rhizobium, then he must specify that I need this culture or rhizobium for this particular crop, because they are crop specific. So see the groups host specificity of rhizobium species for nodulation and nitrogen fixation. It is very important for students, particularly such kind of questions are asked in quiz exams, that name the rhizobium species which infect the bean group or alfalfa group. So you need to remember such names. For example, Rhizobium leguminosarum, BVVC, it infects peas, vetches and lentils. Rhizobium leguminosarum, BV fascioli, it is associated with bean group, common bean, Phaseolus vulgaris. Rhizobium leguminosarum, BV trifoli, so it is associated with clover group, Berseem woody legumes. Rhizobium meliloti is associated with alfalfa group, which is alfalfa or lucerne or fenugreek. Rhizobium species chickpea group, Rhizobium fredi, Bradyrhizobium japonicum and Bradyrhizobium alkani. They are associated with soybean group. And Bradyrhizobium species cowpea group, pigeon pea, cowpea, mung bean, black gram, rice bean, cluster bean, lima bean, Styloxanthus centrosema. Dear students, these Styloxanthus and centrosema and Cerato, they are fodder legumes. They are used in certain countries to feed the animals. Rhizobium lupini is lupini groups, lupines, and Rhizobium tropici is groundnut, common beans. So these are the latest groups and latest associated bacterium. Nitrogen fixation rate by legumes varies with the soil, climate, crop species and fertilizer affect nitrogen fixation. Means a one particular legume may not fix exactly the same kind of nitrogen again and again. Under same condition, all legumes cannot produce the same kind of nitrogen. So N fixation rates varies with the soil, climate, crop species and kind of nitrogen fertilizer applied. So first time growing a legume species in a soil, inoculation is necessary under those conditions. Low availability of iron, molybdenum, sulfur and other affect nitrogen fixation. The soils which are deficient in iron, molybdenum or sulfur will fix less nitrogen compared to the soils which have sufficient levels of iron and molybdenum. I have shown you how it was part of the proteins. The legume rhizobium association generally function best on soils that are not too acid. For example, brady rhizobium can tolerate considerable acidity. However, most of the rhizobium bacteria, or in general all bacteria, do not like acidic conditions. They prefer slightly alkaline or neutral conditions. So, optimum availability of water and other resources. These organisms also require some water supply. If there is excess water supply, flooding of the field, then these bacteria may not function. So, N fixation will be reduced or stopped. But if they get right amount of moisture in the soil, N fixation is optimum. So, crop management also affects the nitrogen fixation rate. For example, plant species, we have seen that some species can fix up to 280 kg nitrogen per hectare per year, but some can fix only 50 to 60 kg. So, this is a species difference. For example, grain legumes fix less nitrogen than forage legumes. High levels of available nitrogen, if we go on adding or increasing the rate of nitrogen fertilizer in the soil, then the fixation by rhizobium will decline. They will not like to function in the presence of excess nitrogen in the soil. And you can see this picture, this is very important picture. On x-axis we have increasing amount of nitrogen fertilizer. Some legume crop was grown and it was applied with some graded doses of nitrogen, say starting from 20, 40, 60, maybe up to 100. On y-axis you have amount of nitrogen in legume plant. So, you can see three different colors here. As the amount of nitrogen fertilizer applied is increasing, the contribution of fertilizer nitrogen in the nitrogen requirement of the crop is mainly by fertilizer. But you see, as the rate of fertilizer application or nitrogen application is increasing, the contribution of nitrogen fixed by nodule bacteria is declining sharply. See at the end of the x-axis, you can see contribution of nitrogen fixed by nodule bacteria has become almost zero. So, wherever you have excessive supply of nitrogenous fertilizer, the N fixation reduces or declines or stops. You can see here, if more nitrogen fertilizer added, the biological nitrogen fixation reduces or declines. The inorganic nitrogen replaces biological fixed nitrogen, saving the plant some energy that would have been used by nodule bacteria. Plant growth is also little affected by the nitrogen fertilizer. Certain legumes species fix nitrogen so inefficiently, for example, Phaseolus bean, that they respond positively to the use of nitrogen fertilizer. The uptake of inorganic nitrogen released by mineralization, that is middle pool in diagram, may or may not be much affected by the N fertilizer. Now, legume rhizobium symbiosis and soil nitrogen. Over time, legumes can significantly increase the soil nitrogen and benefit non-fixing species grown in their association. So, this is quite interesting that certain non-legume species like cereals, if they are grown in the vicinity of legume plant, then those cereals are benefited maybe in the same season and also in the subsequent season or subsequent crop. Some direct nitrogen transfer may take place via mycorrhizal hyphae connecting two plants. This is very important. The vigorous development of a grass in a legume grass mixture is evidence of this rapid nitrogen release. You can see slide on this next slide here. It is quite interesting that ryegrass mostly grown under temperate conditions alone or with ladino clover. Ladino is a clover kind of legume plant, forage legume plant. For the first two harvests, nitrogen fixed by the clover was not available to the ryegrass. In subsequent harvests, the fixed nitrogen was available and taken up by the ryegrass, that led to increased nitrogen concentration in ryegrass. See this picture carefully. If ryegrass is grown alone, you can see the nitrogen concentration is approximately 1.8% at different dates of cutting, almost uniform, not much difference. But if the same cereal crop, that is ryegrass, is grown with legume, ladino clover, then you can see the nitrogen concentration on the third date of cutting, that is 11/29, it has reached about 3.4%. Where from this excess nitrogen has entered into the ryegrass? That means it has been contributed by the associated clover. Clover has transferred its nitrogen to the cereal. Therefore, the concentration of nitrogen has increased from 1.8% to 3.4% in the same cereal. Thus, it has become nutritionally rich. It will be good for the animals. In the case of legume crops harvested for seed or hay, most of the nitrogen fixed is removed from the field with the harvest. In addition, from such crops should be considered as nitrogen savers for the soil rather than the nitrogen builders. On the other hand, considerable buildup of soil nitrogen can be achieved by perennial legumes such as alfalfa or kudzu, and by annual legumes such as hairy vetch if the entire growth is returned to the soil. So, recycling is also important. Now, after rhizobium legume symbiosis, we go to Azotobacter. So, Azotobacter are free living bacteria which fixes atmospheric nitrogen. So, these are spiral shaped, microaerophilic. Microaerophilic means they need less oxygen or less air. Gram negative nitrogen fixing bacteria found in association with grass roots. They are in the nearby or vicinity of the grass roots or grassy plants or cereal plants. They were first isolated by Beijerinck in 1925 and named as Spirillum lipoferum. It was the first name for Azotobacter. Also produce IAA. IAA is indole acetic acid, a growth hormone. GA is your gibberellic acid, cytokinins and also vitamins. You can see how much useful they are. Besides fixing nitrogen, they are producing hormones, producing vitamins, and these vitamins and hormones may make your plant defense mechanism better. The three species are reported for Azotobacter. One is Azotobacter brasiliensis. It is quite common and it is isolated from a Brazilian soil. Therefore, the name is Azotobacter brasiliensis. A. lipoferum. So, it is actually fat bearing. Therefore, name is lipoferum. And A. pellicle. And Azotobacter can fix 20 to 40 kilogram nitrogen per hectare per year in association with grass or cereal roots. They do not have direct symbiotic association. They are in that particular area or rhizospheric part only. Non-symbiotic aerobic free living organisms fix atmospheric nitrogen, that is N2, in variety of crops, inoculated with seeding of directly applied in soil, or they can be used to treat the seedlings also. Like in rice, we have seedlings. In certain vegetable crops, we also transplant these crops by seedling. So, seed or seedling both can be treated with this bacteria. Foliar application is also useful. Carrier based and liquid based forms are also available. Also synthesize some growth hormones, gibberellins, cytokinins and pantothenic acids, and fixing 10 to 20 kilograms nitrogen per hectare per year. Next bacteria, free living bacteria fixing atmospheric nitrogen is Azospilum. These are spiral shaped microaerophilic gram negative nitrogen fixing bacteria found in association with grass roots. They are in the vicinity or nearby area of the grass roots or sugarcane or cereal crops. Isolated by Beijerinck, really this Beijerinck scientist has done wonder. He has isolated many nitrogen fixing organisms. So, Beijerinck in 1925 named Spirillum lipoferum. The name Azospilum was given by Terrand, fixing 20 to 40 kilogram nitrogen per hectare in association with grass or cereal roots. A number of hormones are produced, like Azotobacter also produce, Azospilum also produce indole acetic acid, GA and cytokinins. Then Azolla and blue-green algae is the next organism fixing atmospheric nitrogen. So, Azolla is freshwater fern in ponds, ditches, canals and paddy fields, fixes nitrogen in symbiotic association with cyanobacterium and Anabaena azoli, and there are 5 species of azolla. Azolla pinnata, it is most important and occurs in Southeast Asia and tropical Africa. Other species of azolla is Azolla caroliniana, found in North and South America, A. filiculoides, cold tolerant, A. microphylla, heat tolerant, and A. nilotica from Nile in Africa. So, these are important species of azolla. Now, azolla needs sufficient supply of phosphorus, that is important for its normal growth and activities. Azolla can fix about 25 to 40 kg nitrogen per hectare per crop. A better food for fish, ducks and pigs, used as green manure, and it is rich in nutrients. You can see it contains 2.08% nitrogen, 0.61% phosphorus and 2.05% potassium and a CN ratio of 14. Now, blue-green algae or cyanobacteria are filamentous photosynthetic aerobic nitrogen fixing organisms. Commonly available BGA species are nostoc, Anabaena, Olocera, Tolipothrix and Calothrix. In paddy fields, they fix approximately 25 to 30 kg nitrogen per hectare per season. So, they are important for rice paddies. You can see this azolla plus BGA symbiosis. So, this is complex of azolla BGA, means it is having both azolla as well as BGA. And see the BGA cyanobacteria growth in tank. And now we go to phosphate solubilizers, potassium and zinc solubilizers, compost, accelerator, PGPR and AM fungi. Now see phosphate solubilizers. The phosphate solubilizing microorganisms or bacteria, PSM, commonly called as PSM, phosphate solubilizing microorganism or PSB, phosphate solubilizing bacteria, include bacteria, fungi, yeast and actinomycetes. They produce number of organic acids, citric acid, glutamic acid, lactic acid, oxalic acid, malic acid, fumaric acid, tartaric acid and alpha ketobutyric acid, and maybe some more kind of acids. And these acids solubilize the native or sparingly soluble phosphorus for plant uptake. For example, you understand that water soluble phosphatic fertilizers are applied to the soil and they are immediately converted to the dicalcium phosphate and then tricalcium phosphate and then to apatite. So, this apatite is actually insoluble. But if we have PSB or phosphate solubilizing bacteria or fungi, so they will release certain acids into the soil and those acids will solubilize this apatite. Therefore, they will make it available to the plant. So, that is how they can be useful in solubilizing the phosphorus or fixed phosphorus. So, even application of these microbes has been recommended with the rock phosphate for solubilization of the latter. As you know that rock phosphate may contain 12 to 14, 16% of phosphorus, but most of the phosphorus or rather all phosphorus in rock phosphate is water insoluble, citrate insoluble, means it is not soluble. It is kind of unavailable phosphorus. But if you treat this with the PSB or PSM, then this rock phosphate phosphorus can be solubilized and it can be made available to the plant. So, therefore, they have very important role in solubilization of rock phosphate as well. Now, see the examples phosphate solubilizing bacteria PSB. So, the topmost and most important bacteria is Bacillus megatherium variety phosphaticum, most common in the world. Then Bacillus polyphyxa, Bacillus subtilis, Pseudomonas striata, Agrobacterium species, then P solubilizing fungi. In this case, fungi are more important than bacteria. So, Aspergillus avamori, Penicillium digitatum, Penicillium bellagi. So, they are actually saprophytic fungi. So, they may not be harmful to our plants or crops. And of course, yeast can also be used for phosphorus solubilization. and species is Saccharomyces species, and actinomycetes like Streptomyces species and Nocardia species. Both can be used as phosphate solubilizer. And it is a fact that fungi are better phosphorus solubilizer than bacteria, and they may often solubilize 10 times or more phosphorus than bacteria. So it is better to use fungi as P solubilizer than bacteria. Now, not only phosphorus, but people have found out certain organism that can solubilize the fixed K also. Sometimes potassium is also fixed in the soil, and sometimes it is also there in the unavailable form. So there are bacteria, there are fungi, there are organisms which can solubilize this fixed K and make it available to the plants. Certain bacterial species solubilize K bearing minerals and convert K means potassium, to soluble forms for plant uptake. Some positive effects on soil fertility have been found by using this K solubilizer. K uptake has been found to increase, and eventually your crop productivity has increased, and such kind of information is coming from many places and many scientists. However, there has been a remarkable inconsistency in responses across crops. Inconsistency means they do not give response always and in all kind of soil, under all climatic situation, under all crop situation. So sometimes their performance or their response is inconsistent depending upon the region, climate, crop and soil factors. Example of K solubilizing bacteria are Acidothiobacillus ferrooxidans, Penibacillus species, Bacillus mucilaginosus, Bacillus edaficus, Bacillus circulans. So these are important K solubilizing species, and now in some places cultures of these K solubilizers are also available. Those who are interested can take them and use them. Now, like K solubilizer, we also have zinc solubilizer or zinc solubilizing bacteria, and they make the available fixed zinc, or fixed zinc can be solubilized by Bacillus subtilis and Thiobacillus thiooxidans. So these are two bacteria that can solubilize the zinc also. And then the fourth group of biofertilizer is compost accelerators. So some microbes used for making compost and in situ decomposition of organic residues, they are divided into two groups. As you know, during the composting process, we take carbonaceous material, organic material, which contains very wide CN ratio, and we want to narrow down this wider CN ratio. Then certain organisms or certain composting accelerator can be used, so that the process of composting becomes very fast. So some microbes used for making compost and in situ decomposition of organic residues are divided into two groups. Number one, cellulolytic or decomposing cellulose organisms. Examples are Trichoderma viridi, Aspergillus niger, Chaetomium abuneus, Cellumonas species, Clostridium species, Nocardia species and Streptomyces species. So these are the cellulolytic organism, and they speed up the process of composting actually. And your cellulose, hemicellulose and lignin are the materials which are digested or decomposed in the end. In the beginning, simple compounds like sugars, starch, proteins are decomposed, but at later stage, or rather I can say lignin is the last compound to be decomposed. So therefore, we need certain organism that can fasten this process and reduce the time for composting. Now, another group of organism which is used as biofertilizer is plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, commonly called as PGPR. And sometimes if you are dealing with bacteria only, then PGPB is also there. So these bacteria reside or live mainly in or near the plant roots and promote plant growth. They live in the neighborhood of the plant roots or in the rhizospheric soils. There may be three kinds of bacteria associated with the plant roots. One may be beneficial, one may be deleterious, and some may be neutral. Neutral means no effect. Deleterious means these kind of organism can have some harmful effect on the plant growth. But beneficial organism always have good effect on the plant growth. The beneficial free living soil bacteria are called as plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, examples Bacillus and Pseudomonas, and they always promote the plant growth. And I have seen one case, or not one case, there are many cases where cereal crops have given response to the rhizobium application. Dear students, you would surprise to know it that rhizobium has benefited rice crop, wheat crop, and many other cereal crop. Of course, it happily lives with the leguminous crops, but research from International Rice Research Institute has suggested that rhizobium can be used as a PGPR material for rice, which increases growth, yield attributes, and yield of rice plant. So, PGPR may affect the plant growth indirectly or directly. Now, let us see some functions of plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, how they are useful, how they are beneficial. They fix the nutrients. The first advantage is nitrogen fixation. On an average, 20 to 30 or even up to 40 kilogram nitrogen per hectare per year can be fixed by Azospirillum brasiliensis. And they also produce certain phytohormones like indole acetic acid, which is a growth hormone which helps the plant to grow better, to improve the growth, and plant can produce vigorous growth. They facilitate the uptake of certain nutrients from the environment. So, it has been found that I gave the case of rhizobium. Rhizobium in rice has improved the phosphorus uptake, nitrogen uptake by rice. So, therefore, these bacteria, besides fixing nitrogen, they also make other nutrients available, or they increase the availability and uptake of other nutrients, particularly phosphorus. And they also lessen or prevent the incidence of diseases in crop like Bacillus subtilis is known to reduce the effect of blast disease in rice. The paddy blast is quite serious disease, and it has been found that if you treat the seed or if you treat the seedlings with the culture of Bacillus subtilis, it can reduce the incidence of paddy blast, and rice crop can be saved from this fungus, blast fungus. Therefore, there are many cases in which this PGPR has been used to prevent or control the plant diseases. Some PGPR are also used as biocontrol agents. Then we go to arbuscular mycorrhiza fungi, AM fungi. They are very important group of organism, and they are responsible for solubilization and mobilization of phosphorus. So, they have symbiotic association between fungus and roots of vascular plants, particularly higher plants. Fungus colonizes the host plant's root tissues either intracellularly. If it is intracellularly, then it is endomycorrhiza or endomycorrhizal fungi, or AMF, arbuscular mycorrhiza fungi or AM fungi, or extracellularly, ectomycorrhizal fungi, ectomycorrhizal fungi. They are mostly in the temperate region crops, these ectomycorrhiza, but endomycorrhiza are more frequently distributed in subtropical and tropical kind of climate. And ectomycorrhizas are associated with the roots of around just 10% of plant families, mostly woody plants. The ectomycorrhizas are primarily consisting of a hyphal sheath or mantle and a heartic net of hyphae surrounding the plant cells in the root cortex. However, in AM fungi, the aseptate hypha enter the root cortical cells and form characteristic arbuscule. You can see in the picture some arbuscules are like sac-like structure is visible. These arbuscules are the intracellular tree-like branching structures that the fungi form within root cortical cells, means it can enter the cortical cells. Arbuscules are the essential locations or sites for the exchange of carbon compounds from the plant for mineral nutrients, particularly phosphorus from the fungus. Means fungus will transfer phosphorus to the host plant and host plant will give carbon to the fungus for energy. Plants provide sugar to the associated fungi. Now you can see this picture. This is AM fungi colonizing the root part, root cells. So you can see it is entering the cortex region of the cell, and it is not going beyond the cortex region. You can see root hair and the filaments of this fungus or mycelium of this fungus, and you can see interesting thing is that the diameter of fungus hypha is shorter or smaller than the root hair. So they increase the absorption area of the plant roots. And you can also see arbuscules are the branched structures inside the cell, and they are the site or location for exchange of substances. You see epidermis and you also see reproductive chlamydospores. So this is how these endomycorrhiza or AM fungi infect the roots of the higher plants. And see some more clear picture about these arbuscules, vesicles. Certain AM fungi can also form vesicle, but all AM fungi will not form vesicles. And you can see the branched hyphae or mycelium, root hair, chlamydospores, etc. Now, what is the role of fungi in this case? They increase the root volume and absorptive surface of roots. 10 to 1000 times increase in the surface area or absorptive area of the roots. So therefore, roots can take up more water, more phosphorus, more nutrients with the help of this fungi. It helps in increased uptake of soil resources, helping the plants to acquire phosphorus, a nutrient that is highly immobile in the soil. Mycorrhiza fungi act as an extension of the plant root system, acquiring phosphorus from the areas inaccessible to the roots. Means it will reach to the areas of the soil where this the plant roots cannot reach. They release tightly bound soil nutrients like phosphorus, iron and others. Protection of host plant from abiotic and biotic stresses is another function. For example, drought and disease tolerance. The external hyphae of mycorrhizal fungi also improve soil aggregation, reduce erosion and maintain soil porosity. Act as a conduit for communication between linked plant. So I will show you how it is acting as a conduit. Increase the transfer of symbiotically fixed nitrogen from legume to non-legume under mixed or intercropping system. At this stage, many of you must not be knowing that these mycorrhizal fungi can help in transfer of nitrogen from legume to the non-legume plant if they are grown together. It is quite interesting fact. See how it is done. So you can see this picture. In this picture, one plant is cereal plant on the left side. On the right side, it is legume plant, and legume plant has root nodules and it is fixing nitrogen, and non-legume plant does not have this root nodules. So nitrogen fixed by legume is getting transferred from legume to the non-legume with the help of mycorrhiza. It is making bridges between the roots of two plants, and it is getting substances transferred from legume to non-legume. And also sometimes non-legume can also supply some material, food material to the legume like sugar, etc. can be transferred. So see, quite interesting fact. Now 4 players in this interaction are there: mycorrhizal fungi, rhizobia, bacteria, legume and non-legume plants. So there are 4 players in this case, and all are interacting in 4 different ways. Way number 1 is both AM fungi and rhizobium get energy from sugars, and sugar is coming photosynthesis. Both plants produce sugars. Rhizobia form nodules in legume roots and fix nitrogen and provide to the host plant. AMF fungi infect both legume plus non-legume. It is their plants and form hyphal interconnections. I referred it as a bridge between them. The AMF assists in P uptake and transfer nutrients from one plant to the other plant. Isotope tracer studies have shown that nitrogen transferred from the legume to non-legume and phosphorus is mostly transferred to legume from non-legume. One is giving other. So it is just mutual relationship. non-legume grass fibrous root system and extensive mycorrhizal network which is more efficient in extracting phosphorus from soil than legume roots. So, some direct transfer of nutrients via mycorrhizal connections occur in many mixed plant communities such as in forest, understories, grass legume pastures and mixture cropping systems. So, these kind of research is required to be done by people. Now, you see this is a very good picture which further confirms that the legume plants directly transfer nitrogen to the cereal plants or associated grasses. So, in this case you see one is legume plant on the left side, on the right side where you get blue arrow you get non-legume plant, and you see it is written there that plant species, cultivars and plant density will affect the transfer from legume to non-legume, transfer of nitrogen from legume to non-legume, but it is a direct transfer with the help of mycelial network of the AM fungi, and their roots are intermingling through AM fungi, and you can see that other processes are also happening in the soil, but main thing here is shown that nitrogen is getting transferred from legume to non-legume. So, possible below ground nitrogen transfer mechanism from legume to non-legume and decomposition of roots and nodules, root exudates and mycorrhizal mediated nitrogen transfer, and the wide range of biotic and abiotic factors that affect nitrogen transfer. Most mycorrhizal species exhibit low host specificity, allowing for connections between dissimilar plants to be common. Studies have shown presence of AM fungi can increase the transfer of symbiotically fixed nitrogen from legume to non-legume. These are the evidences which are listed here. You can see them. White clover to perennial ryegrass has been proved. Berseem clover to maize has been proved. Pea to barley, soybean to maize, mung bean to rice have been proved. So, there are many more such evidences which suggest that legume can easily transfer nitrogen to the non-legumes which are growing simultaneously. Now, in the end, dear students, now we will see what are different constraints in the adoption and popularization of biofertilizers. So, of course, we see lot of benefits of biofertilizers, but still we need to do a lot. They must reach, this technology should go to the farmers, and the area under this technology of biofertilizer should increase in the country. So, we need to understand, we need to learn different constraints so that we can overcome them and take the advantage of these biofertilizers. The upkeep and maintenance of biofertilizers require special care, particularly during the storage. Many times these biofertilizers get dead and do not perform well. They have some expiry date and must be used before it. It may get contaminated with other organisms, so need to save them from contamination. The soil should not be too poor in fertility so that it has sufficient nutrients, means we need to give sufficient nutrients. Biofertilizers partially meet the nutrient requirement of crops, but they cannot fully replace the chemical fertilizer. This is the limitation. Highly acidic or highly alkaline soil is not suitable for them. Heavy metals are not good for the growth of this and fixation of the nutrients. So, friends, we have seen that biofertilizers are very, very important. Nitrogenous biofertilizer, phosphatic biofertilizer, or your K and zinc solubilizers, and of course, mycorrhiza are getting very important role as a biofertilizer. So, we need to enhance the use of biofertilizers by the farmers so that we can improve the fertility of the soil and hence crop productivity, and we can also reduce the use of chemical fertilizers so that we can protect the environment also. Thank you very much.